We're back here in the second segment of our program, Jones and Company, and today we are talking about Lighthouse Point in Eleuthera, and we are having a discussion with Sam Duncombe. Got real news.
Mr. Duncombe, I know how strongly you feel about the environment, but sometimes there's a view that the environmentalist wants to see no development. Why can't we reach a balance?
Okay, well, if you look at globally what is going on with the environment, we've lost 50% of coral reefs, 50% of mangroves, 50% of forest. Our water tables world over are being polluted. Our air is polluted. I say that the economy got the 50% that was given to them. It's time for us not to not have development, just to make sure that when we do development, the footprint is as light as possible. And that's what we're trying to see, and that's what the vision for South Eleuthera is. After the first development was supposed to go at Lighthouse Point, the big mega development, Sean Ingram with One Eleuthera created a shared vision, which is a report that's available online. It's been distributed all over the place. And what that vision does is it connects all of South Eleuthera. It actually connects the entire island. But specifically over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of work in terms of helping communities in South Eleuthera. One of the beautiful things about Lighthouse Point is it's a long drive, and you have to pass all of these communities to get to it. So you're going to stop for food, you're going to stop for gas, you're going to stop for drinks, you're going to have a beer, whatever. And those opportunities will only increase for those settlements, because there's part of that vision is restoring the Miller's Plantation, which is in Bannerman Town, and driving historic tourism that way as well. So it's not about we don't want to develop. We want to develop respectfully. We want to look at the land that we're giving to these developers and saying, okay, you know what, you can do this, but you can't do all this other stuff, or you can do bits of this stuff because you're going to impact the water table, or you want to dredge, and there are reefs out there, or there are mangroves there. And those are the kinds of things that we want to see happen, not no development. Respectful development, development that respects communities and respects our environment and gives back. That's what we're trying to do. You know what, I think in the Bahamas, because most of us live on New Providence, when you go to a family island and you drive and there's beautiful green bush everywhere and the sea everywhere, the point is that yes, eventually parts of that are going to be developed. And all we're saying is that when you go into these areas, let's look at it. Go to those local communities, find out, maybe there's something special about that area that as people from, Nassau government, we don't know because we don't live there. It's like when we were fighting Clifton. Well, most of the people didn't know about Clifton until we went out there, because I had seen those ruins for years and years. Didn't know what they were. And honestly, when something is just being left alone, there's no urgency. But when you see that it's on the chopping block, well, then that's when everybody starts saying, wait a minute. And the thing that, what this, when we were talking about Clifton years and years ago, my vision for Clifton was to do renewable energy, to put up some eco-lodges so that the park could sustain itself. That never happened, and it is open to the public right now. One Eleuthera has taken that and really made a huge impact in terms of how it's going to affect all of South Eleuthera and North Eleuthera, because, you know, when I first saw that plan almost 10 years ago, and I saw that map with all those dots of restaurants and hotels and craft stores, I envisioned a tour that starts at North Eleuthera and ends at Lighthouse Point. And I went, that would be so cool, right? So if we can take that model of development, because let's face it, if you start in North Eleuthera, you're going to be paying somebody for something up there, and then you're going to stop for lunch, and then you've got to stay a night at a hotel, and then you're going to move on, and you're going to be eating and drinking the whole way down, buying gas. So you are actually feeding all those communities all the way down. So that is essentially what we're looking to do with Lighthouse Point now. If Lighthouse Point becomes a national park, it's going to, it already does drive people down there. People will drive down that rocky road to go and see what is Lighthouse Point. And like I told you early on the show, you don't see Lighthouse Point, you feel that. That it is, when I tell you photos do not do it justice, video does not do it justice, you could look at that and you go like, wow, that's really beautiful. But when you're there and you are surrounded by sea and shore plants and bush further back, you feel it. You absolutely feel it. And like I said, I'm sure there are other places of equal beauty all over the Bahamas. And just think if we went to every single island and we did this similar model where everybody gets to benefit down the whole chain of the island, right? You look at historic places, you look at environmental places that are important, not only for themselves, but because those ecosystems are important for us to survive. You can't mess with mangroves. You cannot mess with coral reefs. You know, there are going to be other places, you know, some broadleaf coppice that should be left alone. And all we're saying is, moving forward, can we stop with these huge developments that damage the environment forever? Coral reefs take hundreds, if not thousands of years to regenerate. So do mangroves. They take a very long time to get back. I mean, I remember when, years ago, when Old Fort was still a mangrove, we could drive the boat in and the mangroves were 30 feet high above us in the sea. And so they went down as far. You can never replace that in our lifetime. You cannot replace coral reefs in our lifetime. We need to stop thinking about this quick fix, this quick money, and look at the longer term and develop accordingly. I'm not saying no development. I'm saying let's actively go out there and find developers who have done it sustainably in other countries. I mean, Tiamo, before they took it over, when Mike Hartman was running Tiamo, he did a fantastic job. It was all solar powered. There were no air conditioners, and you didn't know that there were no air conditioners. You were cool in their bungalows. They used solar energy, and that's in the middle of nowhere. You had to go by boat to get to it. So these are places that actually exist on the earth, and we should be following those models of development because those people spend more money, for starters. Cruise ship tourists do not. So we need to start looking at the people who care about the environment. I mean, when I was at Lighthouse Point a couple of weeks ago, we ran into some tourists, and I said, you know, why Eleuthera and why here? And they said, well, we like to go where there are no cruise ships. 20 years ago when I was in Eleuthera, we had the same thing. We invited a couple over to eat with us, and we said, why did you choose Eleuthera? No cruise ships. People want those experiences. We already have cruise ships in Nassau. We already have a cruise ship in Eleuthera, and Half Moon Cay, and Castaways Keys, and Grand Bahama. So why aren't we? Fine, they're here, okay? And they're going to be here for the foreseeable future. Let's just direct that traffic to existing ports. That's all we're saying. I'm not saying don't bring Disney here. If Disney wants to come here, they're welcome to go to Grand Bahama, they're welcome to come here, or share other ports that exist instead of ruining a most spectacular site.
Ms. Duncombe,
Yes.
the two factors. One factor, many of the policymakers in our country do not know the Bahamas. That's the first thing. The second thing, they don't understand how fragile our environment is. You take Long Island right now. Long Island can't grow anything because of saltwater intrusion.
Right.
All right? And traditionally, Long Island has been an agricultural island, a farming island. So what economic activity are the Long Islanders supposed to do now? In view of the fact that during the last hurricane, Long Island was cut in half because of the sea level rise, as you mentioned, and that spilled over into the farmland.
Right.
And so there's salt intrusion in these areas. So you can't grow no bananas, you can't grow no citrus, right? So our environment is very delicate,
Yes, it is.
all right? But people who are planning are so driven by development, they either don't understand or they forget.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that, maybe what needs to happen is that, when you become a member of parliament or a cabinet minister, you have to learn some stuff about what makes these islands tick. You mentioned the salt intrusion in Long Island. It happened right here in New Providence as well. Out by the back of Bacardi Road, that whole wetland came inland, right?
Yeah.
So we are a low-lying country, 5 feet or less above sea level. So when you have storm surges, you're going to get huge waves coming on land. That is obviously going to affect everything that it touches. And you are absolutely right that the politicians, the policymakers, need to get out in the environment and understand what it is that we are trying to preserve. We're not telling people not to have jobs. We're not telling people that we don't want economic activity. But if we continue to go down the same path for the next 60 years, we're going to ruin everything.
But the people in the family islands, they need to be educated as well.
Absolutely.
The extent to which the people in Illustra are on board with you, that the extent to which they support your point of view and the environmentalists, what they are saying about Lighthouse Point. What is the average man on the street in Illustra saying?
Okay, I can only speak from a couple of the meetings that I've been to in terms of, how people feel about it. For one, we had a couple of meetings where they had what I think must have been a rent-a-crowd because they came in and disrupted a One Eleuthera meeting. But we had gone to the Disney meeting before then, and everybody was allowed to talk. So the thing is that, number one, if we're not listening to one another, how are we going to move forward? And there were people in the meeting that genuinely wanted to understand what One Eleuthera is offering in terms of jobs. So I think that for the most part, they've seen what One Eleuthera has done, and they like that vision. And why is it that you do have a Bahamian on the ground, boots on the ground, has been doing amazing work in Eleuthera, and why aren't we all supporting him and his organization?
Okay, let's take this final break here on our program, and we'll come right back.